All Alabama gardener. And the next step in growing our big slicing onions is to start side dressing them. Now I'm sitting here in front of the onion bed. We'll talk about this more in just a moment. But before I get into this, I want to ask you a question. And the question is, and first of all, let me tell you why this question is important. This question is important, or the answer, I should say, to this question is important because your answer to this question will determine how you are thinking about growing your big onions. So here's the question. Do you think of onions as a root crop, like that? Or do you think of it as a leaf crop, like that? Give you a moment to think about that. All right, so here is the correct answer. You should always think of your onions as a leaf crop. Think of these blades as leaves like you would have on any other plant. And the reason why that's important is because the number of these blades determines the number of rings or layers in your onion, and the number of rings or layers in your onion determines the size of the onion. Now, does that make sense? So look at this plant right here. Now, this is something I've been growing in the house all winter. So we look at this plant right here. Let me see if I can get up here close to it so you can see. So if this was a plant that I was trying to grow big onions with, then I would be interested in how many of these blades or leaves that I have. So let's start with this one. We'll count this one as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Looks like we got 9 blades on this onion. That's pretty good, but that's not as good as we can do, or not as good as we should do. We want to get to maybe 13, even 14 of these blades on our onions before they start to make a bulb. Now, I hope that makes some sense. So then the next question is, what is it, and we're talking about fertilizer now, what is it in the terms of fertilizer that grows leaves or foliage? And the answer is nitrate or nitrogen. So what we're going to side dress our onions with is this special kind of fertilizer. It's called ammonium sulfate. And you notice that it's 21% nitrogen. And it also has some sulfur in it. That's why it's called a sulfate. It says it's 24% sulfur. So it's good, and that's what we want. See, the sulfur is what makes your onion have that good, strong taste. Remember when you was a child and you ate onions and you peel onions and slice them, they make your tears come out? Onions don't do that anymore. That's because they're too sweet. And they also don't store good anymore. That's because they're too sweet. So what you want to do is you want an onion that's high in sulfur to give you that really good onion taste. I hope this makes sense to you. All right, now let's get on with some side dressing. Here is our row of onions that we grew from seed, planted back in the autumn. Little row here of it, and there's another row right there. So they've been in the ground now about a week or so, week and a half. And so now I want to come in and side dress them with a special fertilizer. Now, as you see me doing, I'm scratching out a furrow between those two rows of onions. Now this is where I'm going to put the fertilizer. And this fertilizer that we're using is pretty strong, and you definitely do not want to get it on the onions because it will burn them. All right, so here's our ammonium sulfate. Get some of it out this way, let you look at it. Just white granules. Now this bed that I got here is 10 feet long. So I got a row on each side. The instructions for this fertilizer says 1/2 of a cup per 10-foot row. So here's a 1/2 cup, which isn't very much. And there it is. Probably can hold it in both hands. There you can see, it's just not even a double handful. So 1/2 cup isn't very much. So what I'm going to do with this 1/2 cup is I'm going to go sprinkle it very lightly all the way down that row and then come back again. And the more I do that, the better chance I have of getting it spread somewhat equally. So here's our 1/2 cup. All right, so you saw me laying the fertilizer down that row. Now I'm going to cover that back over. All right, so that's the first side dressing with ammonium sulfate, and we will do more as we go on through the growing season. About every 2 weeks to 3 weeks, I'll come in here and do that same thing. Now we got one more important thing to do. Water it well. Always water, when you do something, always water it. Now you see I went out about 4 to 6 inches from that row of onions right there. Put my trench out there. Don't put it right on the onions, it'll burn them. It'll kill them. All right, so here's our 1/2 cup of ammonium sulfate.